Hello everyone. Tonight we will step directly into the thick, suffocating fog of a 100 Years' War battlefield. The air is heavy damp with the smell of churned earth and something faintly metallic, perhaps the tang of blood or just rust on old armor forgotten in the mud. Somewhere in the distance a strange half-lit sound, half shout, half groan, cuts through the haze, pulling your senses taut as if warning you not to get too comfortable. Because surviving a day here, impossible. Seriously. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I'm doing here. And, hey, why not drop your location and the local time in the comments? It's oddly comforting to know who's tuning in as you listen. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle background noise, and let's get started tonight. The dawn struggles through a thick, rolling mist that blankets the battlefield, blurring the lines between friend and foe before the first arrow flies. You stand ankle-deep in muck, the ground beneath you soaked from days of rain, each step sinking slowly into cold, sticky soil. Around you the air buzzes with uneasy murmurs, boots crunching on twigs and sodden leaves armor, clinking in an awkward rhythm, and the distant calls of commanders struggling to be heard over the chaos. This morning is like any other during the 100 Years' War, a name that sounds grand, almost cinematic, but forget any visions of knightly jousts or noble glory. No, this is grinding, relentless, and full of discomforts you won't find in history books. The battlefield is a messy orchestra of confusion, anxiety, and very questionable hygiene. Your helmet presses down on your head, restricting your vision, making you feel like you're peering through a tiny, grimy window. The metallic clangs from nearby soldiers sound distant and distorted, swallowed up by the fog, yet somehow ominous. Communication here is a mess. Commanders shout orders that barely cut through the cacophony, relying on signals that sometimes get lost entirely. No radios, no clear lines, just shouted instructions bouncing off mud-caked walls and the dense forest beyond. You have no idea if the guy next to you is friend or foe, and the last thing you want is to discover it after an arrow pierces your shoulder. The weight of your armor isn't just physical, it's a psychological burden. Imagine wearing a suit that feels like it's made from wet concrete, clinging to your skin soaked through with sweat. You can't wipe away because your gauntlets are locked tight around your hands. Movement is sluggish each step, a reminder that your body is trapped beneath metal plates that don't care about your comfort or agility. You reach instinctively for your sword, but it's heavy, unbalanced, and slippery from the damp air. Training. Forget it. Most of the foot soldiers aren't expertly trained. Many are peasants pressed into service or mercenaries who have learned on the job by sheer luck. And luck, you'll soon learn, is something you'll desperately need. As the sun tries to burn through the mist, a strange, shrill whistle pierces the air, an ominous signal that the longbowmen have begun their deadly work. The longbow, a relatively new but devastating weapon, sends volleys of arrows that darken the sky like a deadly cloud. These aren't the arrows that sing gently past your ear, they whistle with a cold, precise menace that makes you wish you were anywhere else. It's hard to ignore the strange mixture of fear and fascination that the longbow inspires. Scholars debate the true impact of this weapon, some calling it the start of professional warfare that rendered heavy armor obsolete. Others argue that it was merely one piece in a chaotic puzzle of evolving medieval combat. Either way, for you on the ground, the longbow is about survival, duck, dodge, or be pierced. Beneath the din of battle, the low whinnies of horses remind you that mounted knights and cavalry charges add another layer of unpredictability. These animals are majestic but wild, prone to panic in the chaos, trampling friend and foe alike. You try not to think about what happens when a horse panics near you. Spoiler, it's not pretty. Meanwhile, the less glamorous reality is the smell. The stench of unwashed bodies, the fetid mud, the sweat mixing with the occasional hint of rotting food or waste. It's a sensory assault that assaults your nose relentlessly. Hygiene. A joke. Bathing was rare and frowned upon by many for reasons that seem both absurd and unfortunate today. That means bacteria and disease thrive in close quarters, making illness as deadly a threat as any sword. Command is often a cruel lottery. Some leaders are inspiring others downright brutal or incompetent. Your survival can hinge on which side of that coin you fall. Morale swings wildly, fed by rumors, fear, and the occasional burst of gallows humor that keeps you barely sane. There's no room here for chivalry, just raw, desperate will to live through the next hour. And complicating everything, camp followers and non-combatants weave through the chaos, blurring the front lines. Some bring supplies, or tend to the wounded. Others pick through the carnage for anything of value. The battlefield is a tangled mess of roles and responsibilities that nobody explains clearly, leaving you guessing who's friend, foe, or something in between. As the morning trudges forward, the ground shifts from wet mud to something more treacherous. Rain earlier in the week has turned fields into quagmires, and every step is a struggle threatening to suck your boots from your feet. Weather isn't just an inconvenience. It's a battlefield killer. Mud slows, charges, rain ruins. Weapons and cold seeps into your bones, sapping your strength. And just when you think your senses have had enough, the fog of war settles in, not just metaphorically, but physically. Smoke from fires mingles with dust and moisture, clouding your vision and muffling sounds. You strain to hear commands or the telltale clink of enemy armor, but are met mostly with indistinct noises and your own pounding heartbeat. In this chaos, you wonder, how did anyone survive at all? Scholars argue the 100 Years' War marked a brutal shift from the romantic ideals of chivalry toward something harsher and more professional. Some suggest this period birthed modern warfare's bloody efficiency, while others lament the loss of noble combat for a grittier reality. Either way, your day won't last long. Meanwhile, here's a weird fact to keep your mind off the mud. Many soldiers believed in charms, prayers, or lucky tokens more than their swords. Superstition was a frontline strategy. Some swore a rabbit's foot or a saint's relic could save them better than a shield ever could. So you stand soaked and uncertain, the smell of earth and fear thick around you. You brace yourself as the first arrows begin to arc through the mist, knowing that today survival is less about skill and more about sheer dumb luck. You shift your weight uneasily, feeling the cold seep deeper into your bones as the muddy ground threatens to swallow your boots whole. The morning's eerie calm breaks with a series of guttural shouts and clanging metal. Nearby, soldiers scramble their armor, clinking awkwardly, the sounds muffled by the persistent mist. It's hard to tell whether their panic stems from advancing enemies or the sheer exhaustion of standing knee-deep in mud. The longbowmen have taken their positions. You catch a glimpse of taut bowstrings and arrow shafts catching the weak sunlight, poised to unleash death with deadly precision. The longbow wasn't just a weapon. It was a game-changer, one that historians debate endlessly. Some see it as the spearhead of modern ranged warfare, while others argue it merely supplemented traditional combat without fully replacing heavy cavalry. For you, it simply means a sudden hail of arrows, each one a tiny missile of pain aimed with terrifying accuracy. The whistling of arrows overhead is unnerving, a shrill reminder that death often comes silently without a glorious charge or dramatic sword clash. The ground around you erupts as arrows strike shields, helmets, and occasionally flesh, and you're forced to duck instinctively, the metal of your helm scraping the wet mud. Every twitch or stumble threatens to expose a vulnerable spot. Speaking of armor, you probably assumed it was a lifesaver, right? In truth, it's more like a sweaty prison. Heavy steel plates trap your body heat, turning your sweat into a sticky, irritating layer beneath the metal. Limited ventilation means your skin feels clammy, your muscles cramp quicker, and your movements slow to a crawl. Your fingers encased in rigid gauntlets lose dexterity, making it hard to grip your sword or shield firmly. And then there are the horses, massive, powerful, and utterly unpredictable. Mounted knights and their steeds were supposed to be the backbone of medieval armies, but the reality was messier. Horses can spook easily, especially amid the noise and confusion. A panicked horse might trample over comrades or bolt, leaving its rider exposed and vulnerable. You've probably heard tales of knights gallantly charging into battle. What you don't hear is the frequent chaos when a single startled steed disrupts entire formations. If the noise and physical discomfort weren't enough, the battlefield smells like a nightmare. It's a pungent cocktail: damp earth, sweat-soaked armor, unwashed bodies, and the unmistakable odor of stale food. Bathing was rare and discouraged by superstition and logistics. Soldiers often went weeks without washing their skin, crawling with lice and their clothes caked in grime. This lack of hygiene wasn't just unpleasant. It bred disease and infections that killed more men than swords or arrows ever could. Commanders bark orders that barely reach your ears, muffled by the din and the thick mist. Some leaders are capable and inspiring, rallying their troops with fiery speeches. Others are less so, brutal, indecisive, or downright reckless. You quickly learn that leadership could make or break your chances of surviving a single day. A misjudged order might send you charging headlong into a deadly trap, or standing defenseless while the enemy closes in. Around you, camp followers and non-combatants weave through the lines. They carry supplies, tend the wounded, or sometimes just scavenge for anything valuable. Their presence blurs the front line, making it a tangled mess rather than a neat divide between combatants. This chaos adds another layer of unpredictability. People slip through the gaps, spreading rumors, sickness, or worse. The weather refuses to cooperate either. Persistent rain has transformed the field into a quagmire. Each step sinks into mud, dragging your boots down and threatening to throw you off balance. Weapons become slick and difficult to wield. Your sword's grip feels like it's coated in ice. Cold seeps in through gaps in your armor, numbing fingers and toes. And every shiver reminds you how far you are from the warmth of a hearth. The famous fog of war is painfully literal. Smoke from campfires and torches mixes with dust and the mist, making it nearly impossible to see your comrades or enemies clearly. Sounds become distorted echoes. Cries for help or orders get lost in the murmur. You strain to focus, but the battlefield is a sensory overload. Your brain scrambles to sort friend from foe, signal from noise. Now, for a little scholarly debate to keep your mind sharp. Historians argue whether the 100 Years' War truly marked a transition from the romantic chivalry of knights to a more brutal professional style of warfare. Some claim this era birthed the decline of the mounted knight and the rise of infantry and ranged weapons. Others believe chivalric ideals persisted beneath the surface, influencing conduct despite the horrors. Whatever the truth, your day on the front line leaves little room for idealism. Speaking of oddities, medieval soldiers often carried charms or prayed to saints for protection. Some believed these talismans were more reliable than their weapons. Whether a lucky pebble or a carefully folded prayer, these objects offered a fragile sense of control amid chaos. It's a curious blend of faith and desperation that helped keep minds sane when logic failed. As the battle drags on, miscommunications multiply. Friendly fire incidents aren't rare arrows fired blindly, or soldiers mistaking comrades for enemies in the fog. You might find yourself ducking an arrow meant for someone else, or witnessing the chaos unfold around you as alliances crumble under the pressure of noise and confusion. The mental toll is crushing. Fear coils tight in your stomach, fatigue drags on your limbs, and the constant threat of injury or death wears down your resolve. You fight not because of glory, but because giving up means certain death. Desperation sharpens your senses but also frays your nerves. Medical care, if you can call it that, is rudimentary at best. A simple cut risks infection and death. Surgeons often lacked knowledge and sanitation was non-existent. Many soldiers faced wounds that today would be minor, but then meant a slow, painful decline or immediate amputation without anesthetic. Hunger gnaws at you constantly. Rations are meager, sometimes spoiled or non-existent due to supply issues. Men scavenge what they can, often risking their lives for a stale crust of bread or a handful of roots. Starvation saps strength faster than any enemy blade. Finally, as the sun sinks lower, the grim business of war begins, taking prisoners, dividing loot, and burying the dead. The dead often lie unceremoniously in mass graves, or simply left to rot. There's no time for mourning in this brutal reality. So why couldn't you survive a day on these front lines? Because beneath the romantic tales lies a brutal, exhausting, filthy, and chaotic experience, where every breath is a battle, and survival is pure chance. The battlefield shifts in a strange rhythm, one that your body quickly learns to dread. Your muscles ache beneath the weight of the armor, each movement demanding twice the effort it should. The metal plates press against your skin, cold and unforgiving, while your boots squelch in the ever-present mud that has become your prison. You try to keep your balance, but every misstep risks a nasty fall, or worse, leaving you helpless in the mud as enemies close in. The clamor of battle feels both distant and suffocating. Shouts mix with the clang of swords, the snap of arrows, and the frantic neighing of horses. You glimpse flashes of red and blue banners waving above the melee, but the fog of war blurs the edges and faces are masked by helmets and grime. It's a world of shadows and sounds where the line between life and death seems razor thin. The longbowmen remain relentless, their arrows piercing the sky in deadly arcs. For every man who falls, another seems ready to take his place, a grim testament to the brutal manpower battles demanded. The longbow's efficiency is undeniable, and the debate among historians about its role underscores its importance. Was it the death knell for knightly dominance, or merely a tool among many? You feel its impact with every near miss, and the occasional sickening thud as an unlucky comrade is struck. Nearby, a mounted knight spurs his horse forward, armor glinting dully in the weak sunlight. His charge is a mix of grace and violence, a fleeting moment of controlled chaos. But even his powerful steed struggles in the mud, and you watch as the rider narrowly avoids being unhorsed by a hidden root. Horses are magnificent but fragile partners in this deadly dance, prone to panic and prone to turning the tide by accident as much as design. You notice the subtle shifts in the battle's odor. The air is heavy with the sharp tang of sweat, the acrid smell of burnt wood from torches, and the faint but persistent scent of decay. This latter smell doesn't come from the battlefield itself, but the reality of unburied bodies and the poor sanitation that defines life here. Disease breeds in this environment, a silent predator stalking every encampment. Hygiene, or the lack thereof, defines much of your daily misery. Bathing is considered dangerous or unmanly by many, and clean clothes are a luxury seldom afforded. Lice and fleas thrive in your unwashed garments, biting and burrowing as you fight to focus on the battle. This infestation is more than an irritation. It's a vector for plagues that can decimate armies faster than swords or arrows. Leadership continues to be a mixed bag. Some commanders are distant and impersonal, barking orders from a safe vantage point. Others are brutal taskmasters who show little concern for the lives they command. The inconsistencies in leadership mean you often find yourself acting on half-formed plans, or scrambling to respond to unexpected developments. This chaos breeds confusion and lowers morale. Camp followers bustle nearby women and children who serve as cooks, nurses, and traders. Their presence adds a surreal normalcy amid the horror. They tend to the wounded barter goods, or simply survive alongside soldiers, blurring the lines of the battlefield. Their stories are largely lost to history, but their existence reminds you that war isn't just a clash of swords. It's a human catastrophe affecting all levels of society. Weather remains a persistent foe. Mud clings to your legs and weighs down your weapons. The cold seeps into your bones, and the dampness makes your armor a miserable prison. Every movement is a battle against the elements, and you begin to understand that nature itself is as deadly an adversary as any enemy soldier. The literal fog of war thickens. Smoke from burning brush and campfires mingles with mist, obscuring vision and dulling sounds. Orders become garbled whispers, and it's difficult to distinguish friend from foe. In this sensory confusion, survival depends on instinct and luck rather than skill. Here's a scholarly conundrum: did the 100 Years' War truly mark the death of chivalry, or did ideals persist beneath the brutality? Some argue that this era introduced the rise of professional soldiers and mass infantry tactics, while others believe chivalric codes influenced behavior despite the chaos. Your experience tells a grimmer story. Survival often required abandoning ideals altogether. On a lighter note, you learn that medieval soldiers were surprisingly superstitious. Many carried charms or prayed to saints for protection, believing these talismans more effective than armor or swords. This blend of faith and fear offers a glimpse into the mindset of men trying to wrest control from chaos. Miscommunication leads to tragic mistakes. You hear the unmistakable sound of an arrow whizzing past, only to realize it came from your own side. Friendly fire incidents are common, born from the confusion and poor visibility. These accidental injuries weigh heavily on your mind, adding another layer of dread. The psychological strain is immense. Fear coils in your stomach, exhaustion drags at your limbs, and the constant threat of death sharpens every nerve. You fight not out of valor, but sheer desperation driven by the primal instinct to survive just one more minute. Medical care is rudimentary. Wounds that today might be treatable are often death sentences. Surgeons work without anesthesia or sterilization, making procedures painful and frequently fatal. Infection and gangrene claim many more lives than enemy weapons. Hunger gnaws persistently. Food supplies are unreliable, and rations consist of stale bread, dried meat, or sometimes nothing at all. Many soldiers resort to scavenging or going hungry, weakening their bodies and dulling their senses. As daylight fades, the grim task of handling casualties begins. Bodies are gathered with little ceremony, buried in shallow graves or left exposed. Loot is divided among the victors, a cold consolation amid loss. In the end, the romantic tales of knights and glory fade, replaced by a brutal reality. The front lines of the 100 Years' War were a relentless trial where survival was an accident and death a constant companion. The battlefield's relentless pace gives no respite. Your body aches under the strain muscles stiff from the cold and exhaustion. Every breath is a shallow pull of damp, heavy air, mixed with the pungent odors of sweat smoke and the unwashed masses pressing around you. The armor that once seemed like protection now feels like a second skin, suffocating and unyielding, pressing cold steel into sore muscles. Your hands, numb and clumsy in gauntlets, fumble awkwardly with your sword's hilt. The weapon feels heavier than ever, slick with moisture from rain and sweat. Training doesn't prepare you for the reality of combat. The grit, the unpredictability, the chaos. You don't have the luxury of noble finesse. Every slash and parry is a desperate act of survival. Around you, the cries of the wounded and dying are muffled, but persistent. You catch the strained moan of a man clutching a bleeding arm nearby, the wet slap of someone collapsing into the mud, and the frantic orders of medics trying to stem the tide of injury. Medical care, if it can be called that, is brutal and rudimentary. Wounds are probed with unsterilized tools. Amputations happen without anesthetic or precision, and infections run rampant. The realities of disease shadow every camp and battlefield. Dysentery, plague, and scurvy claim thousands more lives than combat itself. Unsanitary latrines are mere holes in the ground, often dangerously close to water supplies. You feel the creeping dread that any illness could be your undoing, just as surely as an enemy's blade. Leadership continues to sway like a weather vane. Some commanders are stoic figures, rallying men with harsh but clear orders. Others are inept or cruel, sending soldiers on hopeless charges or abandoning them to chaos. The morale of your comrades ebbs and flows with the changing fortunes of battle and the temperament of their lords. Whispers of mutiny and desertion swirl in the mud-splattered tents. You catch glimpses of camp followers, a motley crowd of women and children who cook, sew, and tend wounds. Their presence is a bittersweet reminder of home amid the carnage. They bear their own risks, caught between battle lines preyed upon by thieves or worse. Their stories rarely make it into history, but they are an indelible part of the frontline experience. The weather has not relented. Rain blurs vision and deepens the mud, turning the battlefield into a treacherous quagmire. Horses struggle to maintain footing, their panic adding chaos to the melee. The cold bites through your armor, numbing fingers and toes despite your efforts to stay moving. The fog of war lives up to its name. Smoke from campfires and burning debris mixes with the mist, making it nearly impossible to distinguish shapes. The clash of swords and screams is a jumbled symphony of sound that your mind struggles to parse. Signals get lost. Orders go unheard, and the sense of disorientation gnaws at your resolve. In the midst of this chaos, you remember the strange scholarly debates about the war's impact. Was this a turning point from chivalric ideals to a professional military ethos? Did the rise of infantry and ranged weapons truly diminish the role of knights, or was chivalry merely adapting to survive? These questions swirl in the background as you fight to stay alive, largely irrelevant to your immediate terror. Oddly, superstition remains a strong shield against despair. Soldiers clutch worn charms or murmur prayers to saints for protection. Some swear by elaborate rituals, like tying knots in cords or wearing particular colors. These beliefs, while irrational by modern standards, offer a psychological balm amid the unpredictable horrors of war. Miscommunication continues to wreak havoc. Friendly fire incidents increase as confusion mounts. You narrowly avoid an arrow that whistles past your ear, fired by a panicked ally. The chaos leaves no time for blame or explanation, only the desperate hope that you survive the next moments intact. The psychological burden grows heavier. Fear twists your stomach, fatigue drags your limbs, and the constant proximity to death blurs time itself. Each second stretches endlessly, every heartbeat, a reminder that you could fall without warning. You learn to suppress terror, but it lurks beneath the surface, ready to erupt. Medical treatment remains bleak. Field surgeons work tirelessly, but with limited skill and grim tools. Infection is the unseen killer striking after battles, turning minor wounds into death sentences. The absence of sanitation compounds the problem. Bandages are reused, and hygiene is a forgotten concept. Hunger gnaws persistently. Supplies are sporadic, and rations often consist of stale bread, dried meat, or worse. Many soldiers endure days without adequate food, their strength fading, their spirits dimming. Starvation makes even the simplest tasks exhausting. As dusk approaches, the grim work of tending the dead begins. Bodies are gathered, sorted for burial or ransom if captured alive. Loot is divided with little ceremony. The brutality of war shows no kindness in death. Your day on the front line has been a relentless trial, a mixture of mud, fear, exhaustion, and fleeting hope. The romanticized vision of the 100 Years' War fades into a harsh reality, where survival is accidental and fleeting. As the morning light fades and shadows lengthen over the battlefield, your thoughts turn to something less obvious, but no less deadly disease. The stench of decay is everywhere, the sharp tang of blood mingling with the sour odor of rotting flesh and unwashed bodies. You've long since stopped noticing it consciously, but it clings to your clothes and skin, a silent reminder of the many unseen dangers lurking close by. Medieval armies were breeding grounds for illness. Poor sanitation and cramped conditions allowed plague dysentery and typhus to spread rapidly. Latrines, if they existed, were primitive pits dug hastily near campsites, often dangerously close to water sources. Drinking water was frequently contaminated, and boiling it wasn't a common practice. These factors made disease a constant companion, often claiming more lives than the sword or arrow. Medical knowledge at the time was rudimentary. Treatments relied on superstition bleeding and herbal remedies of dubious effectiveness. Surgeons worked without anesthesia or understanding of infection, and amputations were brutal affairs performed with crude tools. Even a minor wound could fester into a fatal infection. You've witnessed comrades die slowly, their pain as vivid and horrifying as any battle wound. Despite these grim realities, the soldiers often relied more on faith and superstition than science. Many carried talismans, believed in protective charms, or recited prayers fervently before battle. This blend of hope and desperation gave them a psychological edge, a sense that fate wasn't entirely out of their hands. You catch a glimpse of a camp follower, a woman tending to a wounded man with practiced hands, her face a mask of weary compassion. Camp followers were essential to army life: cooking, sewing, nursing, and sometimes spying. Their presence blurred the lines between home and battlefield, making war a total social upheaval. The weather remains an unforgiving adversary. Rain turns the battlefield into a sticky swamp mud, clinging to your boots and armor, dragging you down with every step. Cold seeps into your bones, chilling your fingers despite the armor's weight. The wind whistles through broken trees, carrying the distant cries of wounded men and barking dogs. Communication continues to falter. Commands shouted across the field often fail to reach their targets, lost in the cacophony of clashing steel shouting and animal noises. Mist and smoke obscure vision, leading to confusion and occasional friendly fire. The battlefield feels like a foggy nightmare where you struggle to distinguish ally from enemy. Leadership, or the lack thereof, profoundly affects your survival. Some commanders inspire loyalty and courage, while others lead with cruelty or incompetence. The morale of troops shifts accordingly. You've heard rumors of mutiny and desertion, desperate acts born from hopelessness. The scholarly debate over the 100 Years' War's significance continues to echo in your mind. Did this conflict mark the end of chivalry and the rise of professional armies? Was it a turning point toward modern warfare? As you fight for breath and balance in the mud, these questions seem academic, distant from your immediate struggle. An odd fact breaks through the grimness. Some soldiers believed eating onions before battle would protect them from poison and disease. Whether it worked or not, this superstition was widespread, adding a bizarre culinary note to the harsh realities of war. As exhaustion mounts, you face the relentless psychological toll. Fear twists your gut, weariness dulls your senses, and the relentless noise assaults your mind. The line between courage and madness blurs. You fight not for glory, but to survive the next moment. Medical care remains grim. You've seen a soldier's arm amputated without anesthetic, his screams swallowed by the surrounding chaos. Infection is rampant. Many die slowly after battle, victims not of swords, but of microscopic killers. Hunger gnaws ceaselessly. Supplies are erratic, and ration quality poor. Some days you go without proper food, scavenging whatever scraps you can find. The weakening body struggles to keep up with the demands of battle. As night falls, the battlefield quiets into an uneasy stillness. Fires burn low. The wounded moan softly. Bodies are gathered for burial or ransom. Loot is divided without ceremony. The romantic tales of knighthood and honor seem distant fantasies. Your day on the front line reveals a harsh truth. Survival in the 100 Years' War was a fragile, fleeting chance dictated more by circumstance and luck than skill or valor. The sun inches higher, though its light is weak, filtered through thick clouds heavy with impending rain. You stand ankle-deep in mud that clings to your boots like a second skin, the relentless dampness seeping through even your heavy armor. The cold bites mercilessly at exposed skin, leaving your fingers numb and stiff, making even the simplest tasks a test of endurance. Around you, the sounds of battle grow more frantic. The clash of swords, the neighing of horses, the cries of men both brave and terrified, all swirl into a chaotic symphony. Your ears strain to catch commands amid the cacophony, but voices are lost in the fog of war, both literal and metaphorical. It feels like trying to grasp water as it slips through your fingers. Your armor, once a symbol of protection and prestige, now feels like a cumbersome cage. Its weight drags at your limbs, and the lack of ventilation makes the metal plates stick to your skin, soaked with sweat and rain. The promise of invulnerability fades fast when you realize you can barely move, barely breathe beneath the layers of steel. The longbowmen have repositioned their steady volleys, peppering the enemy lines. The longbow's deadly effectiveness reshaped medieval warfare. Some historians argue it accelerated the decline of heavily armored knights by piercing their defenses from a distance. For you, it means constant vigilance, ducking and weaving to avoid sudden silent death from above. Nearby, the thundering hooves of cavalry add to the chaos. Horses spook easily amid the noise and confusion, sometimes turning on their riders, or trampling anyone unlucky enough to be in their path. You watch as a knight's mount rears wildly, throwing its rider into the muck, the man disappearing beneath the mire in a flash of armor and mud. The battlefield reeks of sweat smoke and, something more unsettling, the faint but persistent scent of decay from unburied bodies. Sanitation is practically non-existent. Latrines, if present, are basic pits dug hastily and often dangerously close to water sources. Disease is a constant threat, often deadlier than any weapon. Hygiene is a luxury soldiers can ill afford. Bathing is rare. Clothes are seldom changed, and lice infestations are common. This uncleanliness breeds disease, sapping the strength of men who already struggle under the weight of battle and weather. Command remains inconsistent. Some leaders shout orders that boost morale and cohesion, while others bark confused instructions or disappear into safer areas. Morale fluctuates wildly as hope and despair dance on the edge of every man's will. Camp followers weave through the ranks, women and children providing essential services, like cooking, nursing, and supply runs. Their presence is a bittersweet reminder of home, but also of vulnerability. They live precariously close to the front, facing risks from enemy raids or stray violence. Weather worsens as rain begins to fall steadily. The mud deepens, turning the battlefield into a quagmire. Your boots drag with every step, your sword feels heavier, and the cold creeps deeper, biting through your armor's thin padding. Visibility diminishes as smoke from campfires mingles with the rain and mist. Sounds blur, making it hard to distinguish friend from foe, or to identify the direction of incoming attacks. You find yourself relying on instinct more than strategy or training. The ongoing scholarly debate about the 100 Years' War's role in shifting warfare tactics seems remote from your muddy, exhausted state. The question of whether chivalry died or adapted matters little when survival depends on simply staying on your feet. Curiously, some soldiers believe that carrying a piece of the true cross or a saint's relic could protect them from harm. Others swear by rituals or lucky colors. These superstitions offer psychological comfort amid overwhelming fear. Miscommunications continue to cost lives. You narrowly avoid an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a stark reminder that the fog of war isn't just a phrase but a deadly reality. Friendly fire incidents are tragically common. The mental strain is crushing. Every moment is a battle against fatigue fear and sensory overload. You find yourself going numb emotions dulled as a coping mechanism. The line between courage and terror blurs as exhaustion sets in. Medical treatment remains grim. Surgeons work tirelessly, but with crude tools lacking knowledge of infection control. Many soldiers die not from wounds, but from preventable complications. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Food supplies are inconsistent rations, meager and often spoiled. Starvation saps your strength and dulls your senses, making every movement more laborious. As night approaches, the battlefield quiets, save for the occasional groan or distant shout. Fires burn low, casting flickering shadows. The dead and wounded are gathered with little ceremony. Loot is divided without fanfare. Your day on the front lines underscores a brutal truth. Survival in the 100 Years' War was a precarious balance of endurance, chance, and sheer will. The cold morning light filters through thick, gray clouds, casting a dull glow over the sprawling battlefield. Your boots sink deeper into the clinging mud with each step, the relentless wetness seeping past leather and cloth to chill your skin. The armor feels heavier than ever, its cold steel plates pressing against your body, binding you in a suffocating embrace. Movement is labored, every motion a struggle against the unforgiving weight. Around you, the sounds of battle intensify. The clash of swords rings out, punctuated by the neighs, and panicked screams of horses thrown into confusion. Commanders shout orders, their voices hoarse and urgent, struggling to be heard over the growing chaos. The fog of war is more than metaphor. Smoke dust and mist obscure vision, turning familiar shapes into ghostly forms. The longbowmen continue their deadly work. Arrows whistle through the air, a constant threat from unseen assailants. The longbow's power changed medieval warfare profoundly. Some historians argue it was the beginning of the end for heavily armored knights. Others suggest it was simply one weapon among many in a bloody era. For you, it is a relentless hazard, forcing you to keep your head low and senses sharp. Horses add another layer of unpredictability. Majestic, yet skittish, their panic can turn the tide of battle as easily as a well-placed strike. You watch a knight's steed bolt unexpectedly, sending rider and horse crashing into the muddied earth. Nearby, a mounted archer struggles to steady his mount amid the chaos, arrows loose and flying. The battlefield smells of sweat smoke and something far more unsettling, the sharp metallic tang of blood mixed with the faint odor of rot. Hygiene is almost non-existent. Soldiers rarely bathe, their clothing seldom changed, and lice infestations run rampant. This squalor fosters disease, silently killing more men than swords or arrows. Leadership varies widely. Some commanders inspire fierce loyalty and order. Others exhibit cruelty, indecision, or cowardice. Morale ebbs and flows accordingly, influencing the battle's outcome as much as tactics. Rumors of desertion and mutiny swirl amid the ranks, whispers of men unwilling to face the horrors anew. Camp followers weave through the melee, women and children serving as cooks, nurses, and traders. Their presence is a reminder that war touches all levels of society, blurring the lines between battlefield and home. They face their own dangers, caught in the precarious dance of survival. The weather worsens. Rain falls steadily, turning the field into a morass. Mud clings to boots and weapons, making every movement a Herculean effort. The cold bites through the thin padding beneath your armor, numbing fingers and toes despite your efforts to stay moving. Smoke and mist thicken the fog of war. Sounds distort. Vision blurs. You rely on instinct rather than sight or strategy, a survival skill born of necessity. Historians debate the war's role in ending chivalry and ushering in professional armies. Some claim it was a turning point toward modern warfare. Others see continuity beneath the brutality. Your experience leans toward the harsh and chaotic reality rather than romantic ideals. Superstition remains strong. Soldiers carry charms, pray fervently, and perform rituals to ward off misfortune. These acts offer psychological relief, a fragile sense of control amid overwhelming fear. Miscommunication causes deadly errors. You narrowly dodge an arrow from a panicked ally, a stark reminder that chaos breeds tragedy. The mental toll is immense. Fatigue dulls senses. Fear tightens the chest, and the constant threat of death wears down resolve. You push through numbness and terror driven by a primal will to survive. Medical care is crude. Surgeons operate with basic tools and no anesthesia. Infection claims many, turning wounds into death sentences. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Food is scarce and often spoiled. Starvation saps strength and dulls the mind. As night falls, the battlefield quiets, but remains haunted by groans and distant cries. Fires flicker weakly, casting long shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with the brutal truth. The 100 Years' War's front lines were a grim test of endurance and luck, not valor or glory. The morning light is a dull gray veil, barely penetrating the thick mist that hangs over the battlefield. Your boots sink once again into the quagmire, each step a laborious task as the sticky mud clings like a weight pulling you down. The cold is relentless, gnawing through layers of armor and cloth, chilling your bones and numbing your fingers. Your breath comes in short, visible puffs, mixing with the damp air and the faint smell of smoke and sweat. The sounds around you are a chaotic blend of clashing steel-shouted orders and the panicked neighs of horses caught in the turmoil. Visibility is poor. Shapes loom and recede in the fog, turning friends into threats and enemies into shadows. The fog of war is all too real here, a tangible force that blinds and disorients, making every decision a gamble. The longbowmen continue their deadly rain of arrows. Their shots are precise and unrelenting, forcing you to keep your head low and your shield raised. The longbow's impact on medieval warfare is a subject of endless debate among scholars. Some credit it with signaling the decline of armored knights, while others argue it merely added another layer to an already complex battlefield. For you, it is an ever-present hazard, a silent death from above. Horses contribute both majesty and mayhem. Their sheer size and power can turn the tide of battle, but their nervous nature means they are as much a threat to their riders as the enemy. You watch as a horse bolts unexpectedly, throwing its rider into the mud with a sickening thud. Nearby, a mounted knight struggles to control his mount amid the chaos, his armor glinting faintly in the muted light. The stench of the battlefield is overwhelming. Sweat, blood smoke, and the unmistakable odor of decay mingle in the air. Hygiene is practically non-existent. Soldiers rarely bathe, and their clothing is seldom changed. Lice infestations are common, and disease spreads rapidly in these conditions, killing more men than the enemy's blade. Leadership is a mixed blessing. Some commanders inspire their men with clear orders and courage, while others are indecisive or cruel, sending soldiers into hopeless situations. Morale swings wildly, influenced as much by the temperament of leaders as by the progress of the battle. Rumors of desertion and mutiny whisper through the ranks, a testament to the strain of endless warfare. Camp followers move among the soldiers' women and children who provide cooking, nursing, and other essential services. Their presence blurs the lines between battlefield and home, reminding you that war affects all levels of society. They face their own dangers, often caught between warring factions and the chaos of battle. The weather worsens, rain falling steadily and deepening the mud. Every step becomes a struggle, and your armor feels heavier with water. The cold bites deeper, making fingers stiff and movements sluggish. You try to stay warm by moving constantly, but the effort drains your energy. The fog of war thickens smoke from fires, mingling with mist and rain. Sounds become distorted, and sight is limited to mere feet. You rely on instinct and experience, though both are tested to their limits. The scholarly debate about the 100 Years' War continues in your mind. Did this war truly mark the end of chivalry and the rise of professional armies, or did ideals persist beneath the brutal surface? Your experience suggests the latter is a comforting myth replaced by harsh realities of survival. Superstitions persist among soldiers. Many carry charms or pray for protection, believing these rituals can influence fate. These beliefs offer psychological solace amid the relentless terror. Miscommunications lead to deadly mistakes. You narrowly evade an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a grim reminder that chaos often claims victims indiscriminately. The mental toll grows heavier. Fatigue dulls senses. Fear tightens the chest. The constant threat of death wears down even the strongest will. You push forward numbness, becoming a shield against despair. Medical care remains primitive. Surgeons work tirelessly but lack knowledge and tools. Infection claims many lives, turning minor wounds into death sentences. Hunger gnaws ceaselessly. Supplies are scarce and often spoiled. Starvation weakens bodies and minds alike. As dusk falls, the battlefield quiets except for occasional groans and distant cries. Fires burn low, casting flickering shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day's journey reveals a brutal truth. The 100 Years' War's front lines were a relentless test of endurance luck, and sheer will not of glory or honor. The morning breaks with a dull gray light barely penetrating the thick fog that clings stubbornly to the battlefield. Your boots sink deep into the sodden earth, the mud thick and unyielding each step, a labor that threatens to sap your remaining strength. The cold seeps relentlessly through your armor, gnawing at your fingers and toes, despite your efforts to stay moving. Your breath forms ghostly clouds in the chilly air as you steel yourself for another grueling day. The clamor of battle swells around you, the clash of steel on steel, the hoarse shouts of commanders struggling to be heard, and the frantic neighing of horses tangled in the chaos. Visibility remains poor. Figures loom like specters in the mist, their features obscured beneath helmets and grime. The fog of war is no mere metaphor here. It is a tangible, suffocating presence that clouds your senses and sharpens your anxiety. Above the din, the unmistakable twang of longbows fills the air, arrows whistling toward unseen targets. The longbow's deadly efficiency altered the course of medieval warfare, a fact hotly debated by historians. Some claim it heralded the decline of the armored knight, while others argue it was but one tool among many in a complex martial arsenal. For you, it is an ever-present threat, forcing you to keep your head low and your shield raised. Horses add to the battlefield's unpredictability. Their power is awe-inspiring, but their skittishness turns them into agents of chaos. You watch helplessly as a startled steed bolts, throwing its rider into the muck with a sickening splash. Nearby, a mounted knight struggles to regain control, his armor glinting faintly in the murky light. The scent of battle assaults your nostrils, a pungent mixture of sweat, blood smoke, and decay. Hygiene is a forgotten luxury. Soldiers rarely bathe. Clothes are seldom changed, and lice infestations are rampant. Disease spreads like wildfire, often claiming more lives than combat itself. Leadership is a fickle force. Some commanders rally their men with inspiring orders and steadfast courage. Others falter, issuing confused commands or abandoning their posts. Morale fluctuates with every shift in command and battlefield fortune. Whispers of mutiny and desertion haunt the ranks, a testament to the crushing toll of endless warfare. Amid the turmoil, camp followers weave through the ranks, women and children who cook, nurse, and provide other vital support. Their presence blurs the lines between battlefield and home, reminding you that war touches all facets of life. Yet they face dangers of their own, caught between warring factions and the chaos surrounding them. The weather worsens as rain begins to fall steadily, deepening the mud and chilling your bones. Every movement becomes a monumental effort, your armor heavy with water. The cold bites deeper, numbing your limbs and dulling your reflexes. The fog thickens further, smoke from fires mingling with mist and rain, distorting sounds and obscuring vision. You rely on instinct and fragmented training, though both are stretched to their limits. Scholars debate the 100 Years' War's impact on the decline of chivalry and the rise of professional armies. Your lived experience leans toward a harsher reality, one dominated by chaos survival and the erosion of noble ideals. Superstition remains a fragile comfort among soldiers. Many clutch charms or murmur prayers, hoping to sway fate in their favor. These rituals offer psychological relief amid overwhelming fear. Miscommunications continue to cause fatal errors. You dodge an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a stark reminder of war's indiscriminate cruelty. The mental strain is immense. Fatigue dulls your senses. Fear tightens your chest. The constant threat of death grinds down your will. You press onward, numbness becoming a necessary shield. Medical care is rudimentary at best. Surgeons work tirelessly, but lack knowledge and proper tools. Infection claims countless lives, turning minor wounds into death sentences. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Supplies are meager and often spoiled. Starvation saps strength and dulls the mind, compounding the battle's toll. As dusk settles, the battlefield quiets, save for occasional groans and distant cries. Fires flicker weakly, casting long shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day concludes with a brutal truth. The front lines of the 100 Years' War were a merciless crucible of endurance chance, and unyielding will not valor or glory. The gray dawn rises slowly, a pallid light seeping into the thick mist that clings stubbornly to the battlefield. Your boots sink deep into the sticky mud, the cold dampness creeping relentlessly through your worn leather and chainmail. Every movement is a challenge. The weight of your armor drags you down, your muscles ache, and the chill bites at exposed skin. Breath clouds the air before you as you steady yourself for what promises to be another grueling day. The cacophony of battle swells around you. Swords clash with metal on metal horses neigh, and panic amid the chaos, and commanders shout orders that are swallowed by the roar. Shapes blur in the fog, friend and foe indistinguishable beneath helmets streaked with mud and sweat. This fog of war is a living entity, obscuring, disorienting, suffocating. Overhead, the piercing twang of longbows sounds continuously, sending arrows arcing through the air with lethal intent. The longbow was a game changer. Some historians say the beginning of the end for the knightly elite. Others argue it was simply one deadly tool in a complex arsenal. For you, it's an unyielding threat, forcing you to keep your head low and shield raised. Horses add to the unpredictable nature of the battlefield. Their power is immense, but their fear can turn them into agents of chaos. You watch helplessly as a horse bolts, throwing its rider into the mud with a sickening splash. Nearby, a knight struggles to regain control armor, glinting faintly in the mist. The battlefield reeks, sweat, blood, smoke, and decay mix into an overwhelming stench. Hygiene is almost non-existent. Bathing is rare clothing, seldom changed lice infest the soldiers. Disease runs rampant, killing more than swords or arrows ever do. Leadership is uneven. Some commanders inspire their men with clear orders and courage. Others falter or disappear into safer positions. Morale rises and falls with their fortunes and temperaments. Whispers of mutiny and desertion echo through the ranks. Camp followers, women and children move among soldiers, providing cooking, nursing, and other vital support. Their presence blurs battlefield lines, reminding you war touches all life levels. They face their own dangers, caught between warring factions and chaos. Rain falls steadily, now turning the field into a swamp. Mud clings to boots and weapons, making every move arduous. The cold bites deeper, numbing your fingers and toes. The fog thickens, smoke, mingling with mist and rain. Sounds distort vision, narrows. Instinct replaces strategy, survival becomes primal. Scholars debate whether the 100 Years' War ended chivalry, or if ideals persisted beneath brutality. Your experience points to harsh realities overriding romantic notions. Superstition endures, charms, prayers, rituals offer fragile hope. These beliefs soothe terrified minds. Miscommunications cause fatal errors. You dodge an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a stark lesson in war's indiscriminate cruelty. Mental strain is crushing. Fatigue dulls senses. Fear tightens chest. Death's constant threat wears down will. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is crude. Surgeons labor with crude tools lacking knowledge. Infection kills many, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws. Supplies scarce, often spoiled. Starvation saps strength and dulls minds. As night falls, the battlefield quiets, save for groans and distant cries. Fires flicker. Shadows dance over carnage. Dead gathered loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with harsh truth. The 100 Years' War's front lines were merciless tests of endurance chance, and will not glory or honor. The light of dawn seeps sluggishly through a dense gray sky shrouding the battlefield in a muted gloom. Mud grips your boots like a vice, the cold dampness sneaking through every gap in your armor. Your limbs ache, weighed down not just by steel, but by exhaustion cold and the gnawing hunger that won't abate. You draw a ragged breath, the chill sharp in your lungs, as you prepare for another day in this relentless nightmare. Around you, the sounds of combat are a chaotic symphony. The clang of swords, the shouts of commanders, and the distressed cries of horses caught in the mayhem. Figures emerge and vanish in the fog and smoke, friend and foe indistinguishable beneath helmets smeared with grime and sweat. This fog of war is a cruel living presence, distorting everything it touches. Above, the constant twang of longbows sends deadly arrows streaking through the mist. Their impact is undeniable. Some historians credit the longbow with ending the dominance of armored knights. Others see it as one weapon among many. For you, it's a persistent threat demanding vigilance and quick reflexes. Horses, magnificent but unpredictable, add chaos to the fray. You witness one bolt wildly unseating its rider who crashes into the mire. Nearby, another knight struggles to steady his mount amid the frenzy, his armor catching what little light pierces the gloom. The air reeks, sweat, blood, smoke, and decay mingle into an overpowering stench. Hygiene is a forgotten concept. Soldiers rarely bathe clothes, seldom changed lice infestations common. Disease ravages the ranks silently, often more deadly than enemy weapons. Leadership is a mixed blessing. Some commanders rally their troops with clear commands and courage. Others falter or vanish into safer positions. Morale waxes and wanes, tied closely to leaders' competence and battlefield fortunes. Rumors of desertion and mutiny haunt the weary soldiers. Camp followers weave among the combatants, women and children tending to wounds, cooking meals, offering fragile support. Their presence blurs the line between battlefield and home, a stark reminder that war disrupts all aspects of life. Yet they face grave dangers themselves, caught in the crossfire of chaos. Rain begins to fall steadily, deepening the mud, and chilling your body further. Every movement grows more arduous. Armor feels like a wet prison. Cold bites at exposed skin, numbing fingers and toes, despite your efforts to stay active. The fog thickens. Smoke mingles with mist and rain, muffling sounds and obscuring vision. Instinct replaces strategy. Survival becomes primal and desperate. Scholars debate whether the 100 Years' War ended chivalry, or if ideals persisted beneath brutality. Your experience leans toward harsh realities, overpowering romantic myths. Superstition endures. Soldiers clutch charms and recite prayers seeking protection from forces beyond their control. These rituals offer psychological respite amid terror. Miscommunications cause deadly errors. You narrowly avoid an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a grim reminder of war's indiscriminate cruelty. The psychological toll is immense. Fatigue blunts senses. Fear constricts chest. The looming threat of death wears down resolve. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is rudimentary. Surgeons work tirelessly, but with crude tools and little knowledge. Infection claims countless lives, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Food is scarce and often spoiled. Starvation saps strength and dulls the mind. As night falls, the battlefield quiets, punctuated by occasional groans and distant cries. Fires flicker weakly, casting shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with the harsh truth. The front lines of the 100 Years' War were merciless tests of endurance chance, and will not glory or honor. Dawn creeps in reluctantly through the thick gray sky, barely illuminating the battlefield, cloaked in fog and lingering smoke. Your boots, heavy with mud, drag slowly across the churned earth. Each step a reminder of the relentless grip the quagmire has on your weary body. The cold, damp air seeps beneath your armor, gnawing at your fingers and toes, numbing them, despite your frantic efforts to keep moving. The battlefield hums with the discordant sounds of war. The clang of metal as swords clash. Desperate cries of men and horses caught in the relentless maelstrom, and the shouted orders of commanders fighting to maintain some semblance of control amid the chaos. Figures blur in the mist, friend and foe indistinguishable beneath the grime-smeared helmets and sodden cloaks. Above it all, the sharp twang of longbows echoes continuously, arrows flying with deadly precision. The longbow's revolutionary impact on warfare sparks ongoing debate among historians. Some claim it signaled the end of the heavily armored knight's dominance. Others argue it was but one weapon in a vast, brutal arsenal. For you, it is an unyielding hazard, forcing constant vigilance and quick reflexes to survive. Horses add their own unpredictable energy to the chaos. Their power is awe-inspiring, yet their skittishness turns them into wild cards. You watch helplessly as a startled horse bolts, unseating its rider into the muddy earth. Nearby, a mounted knight fights to regain control armor dull and streaked with mud in the faint light. The stench of battle assaults, your senses, sweat, blood, smoke, and decay meld into an overpowering odor. Hygiene is a luxury long forgotten. Soldiers rarely bathe their garments. Rarely changed lice infestations widespread. Disease silently ravages the ranks, claiming more lives than the sword or arrow. Leadership remains a mixed blessing. Some commanders inspire with courage and clear commands. Others falter or retreat to safety. Morale fluctuates accordingly, influenced heavily by leadership and the battle's shifting fortunes. Rumors of desertion and mutiny weave through the weary ranks. Camp followers, women and children providing cooking, nursing, and support, navigate the treacherous battlefield. Their presence blurs the line between combat and home life, a poignant reminder that war disrupts all facets of society. Yet they too face grave dangers amidst the chaos. The rain intensifies, turning the field into a treacherous swamp. Every movement demands monumental effort. Your armor feels like a soaking, suffocating shroud. Cold gnaws deeper, numbing limbs despite your best efforts to keep warm. The fog thickens smoke, mingling with mist and rain, distorting sounds and limiting sight. You rely on instinct and fragmented training, both stretched to breaking. Historians debate the 100 Years' War's role in ending chivalry and birthing professional armies. Your experience points to harsh, chaotic realities, overriding romantic ideals. Superstitions persist. Soldiers clutch charms, recite prayers, and perform rituals seeking protection. These acts offer fragile psychological solace amid relentless fear. Miscommunications cause fatal errors. You narrowly dodge an arrow fired by a panicked ally, a stark reminder that war's cruelty is indiscriminate. The mental strain is crushing. Fatigue blunts senses. Fear tightens chest. The ever-present shadow of death wears down will. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is crude. Surgeons work with limited tools and knowledge. Infection claims countless lives, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws endlessly. Supplies are sparse, often spoiled. Starvation weakens bodies and dulls minds. As dusk falls, the battlefield grows quiet save for groans and distant cries. Fires flicker, casting flickering shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day closes with a brutal truth survival on the 100 Years' War's front lines, required endurance luck, and sheer will not valor or glory. The muted light of dawn filters weakly through the overcast sky. The battlefield, cloaked in a thick, choking mist that blurs the edges of friend and foe alike. Each step you take sinks deep into the sucking mud, your boots weighed down by the relentless grip of the earth. The cold gnaws at your skin through every layer, creeping beneath armor and cloth, to chill your fingers and toes, numbing your limbs, despite your desperate efforts to stay warm and alert. Around you, the battlefield sounds a grim symphony of clashing swords, the shouts of commanders issuing frantic orders, and the terrified cries of horses thrown into chaos. Shapes emerge and vanish within the haze, men clad in steel and grime their faces, hidden behind helmets smeared with mud and sweat. This fog of war is a cruel living presence, swallowing sound and sight alike, leaving confusion in its wake. Overhead, the relentless twang of longbows sends deadly arrows streaking toward unseen targets. The longbow's transformative role in medieval warfare fuels heated debate among scholars. Some herald it as the beginning of the end for the armored knight's dominance. Others see it as but one weapon in a bloody and complex arsenal. For you, it is an ever-present menace, forcing constant vigilance and swift reflexes. Horses, magnificent yet unpredictable, add to the chaos. Their sheer power is matched by their skittishness. You watch helplessly as a startled steed bolts, unseating its rider in a splash of mud and armor. Nearby, another knight struggles to regain control. His armor dulled and streaked with muck under the pale light. The stench of the battlefield assaults your senses. Sweat, blood, smoke, and decay mingling into an overpowering miasma. Hygiene is forgotten. Bathing is rare, clothes seldom changed, and lice infest soldiers relentlessly. Disease spreads silently, claiming more lives than enemy blades. Leadership varies wildly. Some commanders inspire with courage and clear commands. Others falter or vanish from the fray. Morale ebbs and flows with fortunes and leadership. Rumors of desertion and mutiny haunt the rank signs of the war's crushing toll. Camp followers, women and children providing food. Nursing and other support navigate the perilous battlefield. Their presence blurs lines between combat and home, a stark reminder that war disrupts all facets of life. Yet they face dangers of their own amid the turmoil. The rain falls steadily, turning the field into a swampy morass. Every movement is a struggle. Your armor feels soaked and suffocating. Cold bites deeper, numbing fingers and toes. The fog thickens. Smoke mingles with mist and rain, muffling sounds and obscuring sight. Instinct replaces strategy. survival becomes primal. Scholars debate whether the 100 Years' War ended chivalry or if ideals persisted beneath brutality. Your experience suggests harsh realities overwhelmed romantic myths. Superstitions endure. Soldiers clutch charms and recite prayers seeking protection. These rituals offer fragile psychological comfort amid relentless terror. Miscommunications cause deadly errors. You narrowly dodge an arrow from a panicked ally, a grim reminder of war's indiscriminate cruelty. The mental toll is immense. Fatigue dulls senses. Fear tightens chest. The constant threat of death wears down will. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is rudimentary. Surgeons work tirelessly but with crude tools. Infection claims many lives, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws ceaselessly. Supplies are meager, often spoiled. Starvation weakens body and mind alike. As dusk settles, the battlefield quiets save for groans and distant cries. Fires flicker, casting long shadows over the carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with harsh truth survival on the 100 Years' War's front lines, required endurance luck, and will not valor or glory. The dull, gray light of dawn seeps through the dense, choking fog that shrouds the battlefield. Your boots sink into the sticky, unyielding mud each step, a struggle against the earth's relentless grasp. The cold seeps beneath your armor, gnawing at your fingers and toes, numbing your limbs despite your frantic attempts to keep moving. Every breath you take forms a mist that mingles with the damp air, reminding you just how far you are from warmth and safety. The sounds around you are a chaotic blend of metal, striking metal, desperate cries of men and horses caught in the maelstrom, and shouted commands lost in the din. Shapes loom and recede in the mist. Friends and foes indistinguishable beneath grimy helmets and sodden cloaks. The fog of war is a living, suffocating presence that blinds and disorients, turning the battlefield into a realm of shadows. Above, the twang of longbows rings out incessantly, sending deadly arrows streaking through the mist. The longbow's impact on medieval warfare is profound, sparking debates among historians. Some claim it spelled the end for armored knights. Others see it as one weapon among many. For you, it is a constant threat demanding vigilance and swift reflexes. Horses add unpredictable energy to the chaos. Their strength and size inspire awe, but their skittishness can turn them into agents of destruction. You witness a horse bolt unexpectedly unseating its rider with a sickening splash into the mud. Nearby, a knight struggles to regain control, his armor dulled and streaked with muck in the faint light. The stench of battle assaults your senses, sweat, blood, smoke, and decay, mingling into an overpowering odor. Hygiene is a forgotten concept. Bathing is rare clothes, seldom changed lice infestations widespread. Disease silently ravages the ranks, claiming more lives than the sword or arrow. Leadership is inconsistent. Some commanders inspire with courage and clear orders. Others falter or retreat to safety. Morale waxes and wanes, tied closely to leadership and battlefield fortunes. Rumors of desertion and mutiny haunt the ranks. Camp followers weave through the fray, women and children providing cooking, nursing, and support. Their presence blurs the line between combat and home, reminding you war disrupts all life. Yet they face grave dangers amidst chaos. Rain intensifies, turning the field into a swamp. Movement becomes arduous. Armor feels soaked and suffocating. Cold gnaws deeper, numbing limbs despite your efforts. The fog thickens smoke, mingling with mist and rain, distorting sounds and sight. Instinct replaces strategy. Survival becomes primal. Historians debate whether the 100 Years' War ended chivalry or if ideals persisted beneath brutality. Your experience suggests harsh realities overwhelmed myths. Superstitions remain. Soldiers clutch charms, recite prayers seeking protection. These rituals offer fragile comfort amid terror. Miscommunications cause fatal errors. You narrowly avoid an arrow from a panicked ally, a grim reminder of war's indiscriminate cruelty. The mental toll is crushing. Fatigue blunts senses. Fear tightens chest. Death's threat wears down will. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is crude. Surgeons work tirelessly with limited tools and knowledge. Infection claims countless lives, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Supplies are sparse, often spoiled. Starvation weakens body and mind. As dusk falls, the battlefield quiets, save for groans and distant cries. Fires flicker, casting shadows over carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with a brutal truth. Survival on the 100 Years' War's front lines required endurance luck, and sheer will not glory or honor. Dawn creeps reluctantly over the battlefield, its pale light struggling through the lingering fog and smoke. Your boots sink deep into the sticky mud each step, a monumental effort against the relentless grip of the earth. The cold bites through your armor, numbing fingers and toes, despite your best attempts to keep moving. Your breath escapes in visible puffs, mingling with the damp air as you steel yourself for another day in this relentless nightmare. The battlefield hums with the discordant sounds of war metal, clashing on metal horses' panicked neighs, and the shouted orders of commanders fighting to maintain order amidst chaos. Shapes blur in the mist, friend and foe indistinguishable beneath helmets smeared with grime and sweat. The fog of war is no metaphor here. It is a living, suffocating force, drowning senses and fraying nerves. Above, the steady twang of longbows sends arrows streaking through the air. The longbow revolutionized medieval warfare, a fact that sparks endless debate among scholars. Some herald it as the beginning of the end for the armored knight's dominance. Others argue it was merely one weapon in a vast, bloody arsenal. For you, it is an ever-present menace demanding constant vigilance and quick reflexes. Horses add to the unpredictable chaos. Their power inspires awe, but their skittishness turns them into wildcards. You watch helplessly as a startled steed bolts, unseating its rider into the mire. Nearby, a mounted knight struggles to regain control, his armor dulled and streaked with mud in the pale light. The stench of battle assaults your senses, sweat, blood, smoke, and decay, blending into an overpowering miasma. Hygiene is a forgotten luxury. Bathing, rare clothes, seldom changed lice infestations rampant. Disease spreads silently, claiming more lives than enemy blades. Leadership is uneven. Some commanders rally troops with courage and clear orders. Others falter or retreat. Morale swings with leadership and battlefield fortunes. Rumors of desertion and mutiny haunt the weary ranks. Camp followers, women and children providing vital support navigate the treacherous battlefield. Their presence blurs lines between combat and home. A reminder war disrupts all life. Yet they face dangers of their own amidst chaos. Rain falls steadily, turning the field into a swamp. Every movement is a struggle. Armor feels soaked and suffocating. Cold gnaws deeper, numbing limbs despite efforts to keep warm. The fog thickens. Smoke mingles with mist and rain, muffling sounds and obscuring sight. Instinct replaces strategy. Survival becomes primal. Scholars debate whether the 100 Years' War ended chivalry, or if ideals persisted beneath brutality. Your experience suggests harsh realities overwhelmed romantic myths. Superstitions persist. Soldiers clutch charms, recite prayers, perform rituals seeking protection. These acts offer fragile psychological comfort amid relentless fear. Miscommunications cause deadly errors. You narrowly avoid an arrow from a panicked ally, a grim reminder war's cruelty is indiscriminate. The mental strain is crushing. Fatigue dulls senses. Fear tightens chest. Death's constant threat wears down resolve. You numb yourself to endure. Medical care is rudimentary. Surgeons work tirelessly but with crude tools. Infection claims countless lives, turning minor wounds fatal. Hunger gnaws relentlessly. Supplies are scarce and often spoiled. Starvation saps strength and dulls mind. As dusk settles, the battlefield quiets, save for groans and distant cries. Fires flicker, casting long shadows over carnage. The dead are gathered. Loot divided without ceremony. Your day ends with the brutal truth survival on the 100 Years' War front lines demanded endurance luck, and sheer will not glory or honor. After a long day wading through mud smoke and the endless roar of battle, you start to understand why surviving a single day on the front lines of the 100 Years' War is basically impossible. It's not that you lack courage or fighting skill, but rather a brutal combination of tiny, cruel, and sometimes downright ridiculous factors that together make this nightmare drag on endlessly. You struggle beneath heavy armor, soaked with sweat and grime, every step like dragging the weight of the world. You face the relentless, silent arrows of the longbow, where looking up too soon is basically a death sentence. And beyond all that disease is the invisible enemy, quietly stealing lives faster than any sword. Just staying clean is a losing battle with filthy soldiers, lice infestations, and zero access to hygiene. Add terrible weather-poor leadership and the constant chaos swirling around you, and it quickly becomes clear that luck matters far more than skill or bravery. And don't forget the odd superstitions, little charms, and prayers that soldiers pinned their hopes on, as if a rabbit's foot might actually save them from the nightmare unfolding around every corner. Maybe that's the only comfort anyone had in this senseless chaos. So, as you lie there, soaked, exhausted, and barely hanging on, remember, surviving a day on a medieval battlefield isn't a tale of glory or heroism. It's a long, muddy, stinky, terrifying string of moments where sheer chance and stubborn willpower are your only allies. And that, dear listener, is why you wouldn't survive. Sleep well.